let me just welcome everybody. Thank you. It's 5:06. I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight at this evening. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Madam Chair, I move to go into executive session to discuss personnel matters, homeschool applications, and the proposed action to conclude the lawsuit between the American Humanist Association and Greenville County School District.
Thank you. And do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Michelle Goodwin-Colwell. Any questions? All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. We are now in executive session. Dr. Royce. Gets on. That's the Fine Arts Center. No, they're on there, virtual. Please, everyone, refresh your computer. So the motion has been updated for 6.02.
Got very quiet.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the school board meeting tonight, Tuesday, December 15th. It's 7:01, and we will go ahead and get started. At this time, I would ask for Mr. Lewis for the prayer and Mr. Sailors for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Lewis.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for all the times that you have given us. And please be with us and continue to bless us. And Lord, we pray that you will provide us wisdom and grace to handle difficult situations. And we continue to be with our parents, our families, our students, and our staff. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Tonight we have very exciting news. We have an award presentation for our Miracle Worker awards, and we have two, one from Armstrong Elementary and one from Pelham Road Elementary. Madison Dalton and Heather Dye. I will ask if they would come in. We have a video that we will show, and I will have both the families come in, and then after the video, we will give each one their awards separately. So we have the Dalton family and we have the Dye family. And the principals. We have Christy Qualls from the principal from Pelham Elementary, and we have Tracy Atkins, the principal at Armstrong. And we are social distancing. All right, please view the video.
In the hustle bustle of everyday school life, you never know what will happen.
I felt like I was going to die.
10-year-old Xander Slashinsky, a fifth grader at Pelham Road Elementary School, was finishing off a chicken biscuit when the first period bell started ringing.
I couldn't chew all of it and I swallowed too early. And my face turned purple and I couldn't breathe.
Xander, who was about to head upstairs, did a sudden about face to try to locate a teacher.
He made it to the stairs and realized that he was in trouble.
The teacher he found was Assistant Principal Heather Dye.
And I will never forget the look on his face. His eyes were big and he had a look on his face like something was not right.
She said, "Are you choking?" And I nodded.
I said, "Are you choking?" And he shook his head yes.
She said to bend over, so I did.
I bent him over my arm and started doing back blows first.
Dye's training in life-saving techniques kicked in as she delivered a series of back blows.
She used her wrist bone and hit me right around my neck area.
The chewed-up chicken came flying out. Xander could breathe again. The only thing left to do at this point was notify the boy's mother.
And I pull up and I see Miss Dye there, standing outside the front of the school waiting for me.
But wait, before we tell that story, you need to know about a similar incident that happened the same day.
All right, guys, when we're looking at rounding decimal, what's the most important thing?
Around the same time at Armstrong Elementary School.
Jaheim has a new puppy. The puppy weighs 5.2 pounds.
But it wasn't a student that needed help.
I was scared to death. Seemed like forever.
Fifth grade teacher Frida Rafferty was chewing on some Skittles during their virtual faculty meeting when all of a sudden,
I popped two in my mouth and was chewing them, and then all of a sudden I couldn't breathe.
she coughed and coughed, hoping the Skittle would dislodge. But it soon became clear to everyone this was an emergency.
Eventually, it just kind of got worse and worse, and I started noticing like her face was turning red.
And I was gasping, and everybody was kind of looking at me like, "Are you okay?" And I was like,
That's when Madison Dalton, who also teaches fifth grade and was sitting across from Rafferty when it happened, made an executive decision.
Do I go and get someone? And then my mind just switched and said, I don't have time to get someone. I need to help her.
Fortunately, Dalton knew exactly what to do.
How else could I write pounds?
She jumped behind Rafferty and gave her the abdominal thrust.
She jerked me one good time, and that Skittle came up enough where I could cough it up.
Hey, I have a question.
Dalton did more than save Rafferty's life. The two teachers, who were already close, are now inseparable.
We've been close since we started working. I was her mentor last year. It was her first year here, and I was her mentor. But it's just gotten stronger. I mean, instead of work co-mates and friends, I almost feel like she's my sister now.
I've seen you at breakfast some.
Meanwhile, at Pelham Road Elementary School, where Xander's mom found out the assistant principal saved her son's life,
And so I get there and she hugs me, and I, of course, fall apart.
a valuable lesson was learned by all, that superheroes are real.
Superheroes really are everywhere, and you can see them, and it's being in the right spot at the right time, and it's doing the right things, and it's not panicking.
All of which describe Heather Dye.
What an outcome.
What an outcome, the absolute best outcome. I told his mom, I've seen him several times, and every time I lay eyes on him, I think my heart just skips a beat a little bit.
All in a day's work, which sometimes involves saving someone's life. In the hustle bustle of everyday school life,
So, let me just explain to you why and how this all came about. The Miracle Worker Award tonight is our honor to present this award to two heroic Greenville County School employees. The Miracle Worker Award was first approved by the board in 1996 to recognize individuals for going beyond the call of duty. The actions of a teacher and assistant principal during two separate incidents last month served as an example of how we all hope we would react during a crisis. And I'd like to introduce Armstrong Elementary School fifth grade teacher, Madison Dalton, who is here with her husband, Craig. And Craig, it feels very safe because of his wife, and her principal, Tracy Atkins. So we're going to go ahead and do the first one, Dr. Royster. Let's see. Yes, I have the plaque. I'm not gonna forget the plaque. We're gonna get the plaque. And I have. So excited. Come on. We'll have the principal. Oh, I'm on this side. Do we take these off or we leave them on? We're gonna leave them on and then we'll take them off. Okay, you want me to leave it on when I present it to her? There you go. We're very excited and very proud of you. The video speaks volumes of your commitment to our students and the safety of all. I heard that not only are you a miracle worker when it comes to saving lives, but you're also a fantastic teacher at Armstrong, and we are very honored and pleased to have you as part of our district. And we love Armstrong, and we love our principal, and we love our husband that stands beside us, knowing how safe and not to worry about Skittles or anything else. And here you go. Husband, you can come in. And principal, you can get on the side of me with Dr. Royster standing in the back. Between us, if you want, Dr. Royster. It's just so tight in here, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then you want these off. Okay, we'll social distance. Are you taking them without our mask? Spread out on the dots. Oh, okay. Without the mask? God, I feel. This is where you have somebody you marry and you're not sure it's going to work out, so you put them on the end. And if it doesn't work out, you just cover it. Sorry. 1, 2, 3. All right, and then he said that. Family, of course, a beautiful family, Jason, the better half, and Lily, Kara, and Macy. And I told Macy she must be worth $1 billion because she has all these stores named after her, Macy's department stores. And I just cannot thank you for saving the life of that little fella. His mother was very touched. We're very touched. I love Pelham Elementary for more reasons than one, but y'all are in my area. I'm always so proud of all y'all. You're exceptional. You're a great vice principal, assistant principal, and your principal speaks volumes about your professionalism, your dedication, and all you do in your leadership role. And thank you so much for everything. I'm going to present this to you. I can get in. Oh, I can put my hand in. There you go. Is Dr. Royster in this? Now I have to get one of these. Okay, and then we'll get all of y'all without. You okay? You want just those two rascals. We're gonna get you, don't worry. Without her mask? Okay. Okay. Oh, my dot. And you got girls, Mary says, I'm going to go out of school tomorrow. We have Friday to Friday. And then Thank y'all. Thank you so Mr. Meek Rivas. I would like to thank the courtesy of the Fine Arts Center, the percussionist ensemble. Thank you to their instructor, Wesley Strasser, and to Fine Arts Center Director V. Pat for sharing these talented young students and their performances with us tonight. We were very honored and enjoyed the music, and we appreciate everything that the Fine Arts Center always does for Greenville County and our community. With that being said, I would entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar. There's a motion by Mr. Meek. There's a second by Ms. Wells. Any questions? All in favor, please address by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, and the motion carries. At this time, we have the appearance of visitors. We have 3, but before we do that, I would also like to enter into record that we had an electronic public comment, and it was from Clifton Lee, and the district will go ahead and make contact. And at this time, I will ask Chad Hart if he would be so kind as to come in. Good evening, Mr. Hart. I'm just going to read some information, and I will tell you that Mr. Lewis is our secretary, and he's sitting up there on the podium, up on the desk. He will be timing you, so when I reach this, you'll understand, okay? We welcome you because you signed up to speak tonight before the Board of Trustees, and we thank you for your interest in Greenville County Schools. Before we begin, let me just remind everyone of the following procedures. As each speaker's name, which is Mr. Hart, should proceed to the podium where you are at the end of the board's dais, where there is a microphone and light system. You have up to 3 minutes, and the light will turn green and will be green for the first 2 minutes and will turn yellow when you have 1 minute remaining. In keeping with board policy KCA, abusive language or personal attack aimed at students or staff will not be permitted. All speakers are expected to behave in an orderly, respectful manner, and the board will not engage in discussion with the speaker or respond to comments. The superintendent will designate a member of the staff to respond to you in an appropriate time. Okay, and at this time, when you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you, everyone, for the time. Since I decided to speak, I've asked kids within all levels of Greenville County to write letters to me, those that I know that go to school with my kids, and tell me what their experience is like and what they would change today. I picked a couple to read out today, some excerpts. This is a 4th grade girl. I feel like I'm in prison and I struggle to breathe in my mask. I really hate school now. This is a high school boy. Due to the South Carolina High School League and what Greenville County schools have done, they've essentially cost me an athletic scholarship to the college that I will be attending. The school of choice was set to offer me last spring, but due to baseball season being canceled and all the requirements, they have not been able to watch me play. Now I've been offered a spot to walk on, thus increasing my debt when I leave college. Middle school girl. Some of my best memories were at lunch and hanging out with my friends. I feel like I don't get to have fun anymore. This does nothing but add more stress to my life, plus this virus is not dangerous to me. Another high school boy. I have so many friends suffering from depression and they won't admit it, nor will they talk to anyone. Kids are not the same as they used to be, and that's scary to me. And from my perspective, no one has the courage to address this and talk about anything but the virus. These were hard to read. These are just a few excerpts. What do we know today? We know that the virus has a 99.94% survival rate for those under 39, CDC information. We also know that seasonal flu is 4 times more deadly to this age range as well, also from the CDC. We also know, based off many recent independent studies, that masks are not the answer. They do not work as we are being forced to believe. Even the beloved Dr. Fauci in March said, masks may give you a sense of security, may even stop a droplet, but they are not useful in stopping this virus. But here we are, playing dress up still. We know this virus is real. There is no denying that. And people will die because of it, as will they die of other things. But our actions are worse than the virus itself today. I can go to a restaurant, 100% capacity, wear a mask to sit at my table and sit down, and I'm safe when I sit down. But walking to my table, extremely dangerous. We're using the same logic right now in middle schools. Go to a middle school basketball game right now. The gym is less than 20%, 25% capacity, and only 2 per family. I'm in a divorced family. How exactly does that work? We get to pick which parent goes to each game. It's not fair to us. No grandparents, no siblings can go watch their brother or sister play basketball right now. That's truly unfortunate. There's probably grandparents missing the last opportunity on this earth today to watch their grandchild play their last basketball game. Just 2 weeks ago in Maine, another child took his own life. His name was Spencer Smith. He left a suicide note talking about how he felt disconnected from his friends, was alone, and afraid. I was told by many that no matter what I said tonight or what topic I brought up, it would fall on deaf ears. However, I am stubborn, and those who know me will tell you that. Plus, I hope and pray that all the decision makers in this room are open to others' points of view. The way our children are being treated right now is not right. They're living behind a mask and plexiglass for 8 hours a day for no reason. There's no data, I repeat, no data showing our children are at risk. As parents, we're doing all our can to keep everything as normal as possible. Can I keep going? It's almost over.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's it. But thank you so much. And someone from the district I know has, but will contact you as well. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you. Alicia Nichols.
I think Ms. Nichols is here.
She's not here. Elizabeth McEwen. Elizabeth, I'm just going to read just a few things so you'll know what to expect. First of all, thank you so much for speaking tonight to the Board of Trustees, and thank you for your interest in Greenville County Schools. I'm just going to remind you of a few of the following procedures, okay? You'll have that microphone. You'll speak into the mic. You have up to 3 minutes. The light is green for the first 2 minutes, and then for the last minute, it will turn yellow. Mr. Lewis is sitting up at the desk right there where the board is, and he is keeping the time. When your time is over, you'll hear a beep, and at that time, your time is over. We ask, in keeping with board policy KCA, that abusive language or personal attack aimed at students or staff will not be permitted. Also, that speakers are expected to behave in an orderly and respectful manner. The board will not engage in any discussion with you or respond to comments, but the superintendent will designate a member of the staff to respond to you in an appropriate and timely manner, okay? And at this time, Elizabeth McEwen, you may proceed at your leisure.
Thank you for your time, everybody. Again, my name is Elizabeth McEwen. I am a senior at Malden High School this year, and I'm here to talk about something I like to call extracurricular equality, specifically in the theater realm. I, along with many of my peers, feel like theater and performing and all that has been unfairly taken from us this year. If sports are allowed to continue during a pandemic, why can't theater? It's arguably much safer. Contact sports don't exactly follow CDC guidelines when it comes to social distancing for obvious reasons, and sharing equipment is also not entirely ideal during this time either. However, these things have been able to continue this school year. And not only that, but at Malden specifically, multiple teams have had to quarantine at least once. And they've still been able to play and practice. And this is why I and everybody in my theater department is upset. We're basically tired of being ignored just because we're not as popular as sports. People are dying to see movies and plays again, as I'm sure you all can agree. But with places like the Peace Center and movie theaters being closed, this has become impossible. By giving us the same opportunity that was given to these other extracurriculars, you're giving the community the chance to go out and enjoy themselves again, within reason, of course. We understand that because of COVID, some things just can't happen, but again, if sports are allowed, why isn't theater? We have several ideas of how to make this happen, and we know we can do it. We just need the support of the people who make the big decisions, like you all here today. I'd also like to add that part of the Malden High mission statement reads that every student is provided the opportunity, challenge, and support to realize his or her potential and the ability to assume a productive role in society. So for some of us, we feel that this isn't entirely true right now. It's become more and more obvious to us that the only people getting these quote unquote opportunities are the people in the programs that are the most popular, and that simply isn't fair to us, those of us who aren't in these programs. Personally, for me, my potential to quote unquote assume a productive role in society lies in theater. I mean, I'm about to go to college next year, and I'm pursuing a degree in performing arts. I really don't want to go to college with rusty, performing and acting skills just because the theater program isn't entirely being treated fairly. And everyone worried about seniors missing a quarter of school last year and a quarter of their senior year. But my class has basically been deprived of our entire senior year. I mean, there's no dances, there's no spirit week, none of that. But by having theater back, you can help me and many others who are heavily involved in the program feel like we have something back. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for being here tonight and for your words. Thank you. At this time, the superintendent's report, Dr. Royster.
Good evening. The superintendent's report tonight will be brief. I simply want to take this opportunity to wish each of you a Merry Christmas. To the board, to the staff, not only a Merry Christmas, but a hope for a brighter and happier new year. I also want to extend my appreciation for the countless hours, the difficult decisions, the patience, the effort, and the support that have come from this board, from our employees, from our staff in this most difficult of times. So I look forward to this season with great optimism. And again, for a brighter, happier, and most hopefully more normal new year. So thanks to all of you and to each of you, and I wish for all of you a very happy holiday season. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Dr. Royster. Any comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to 6.01, best board member reappointment.
Madam
Mr.
Chairman.
Sailors? Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the reappointment of James W. Blakely Jr., Duke McCall, William Bill Reniger, and Joseph F. Sullivan to serve an additional 3-year term on the Building Equity Sooner for Tomorrow Board of Directors.
Second.
There's a motion made by Mr. Sailors, seconded by Mr. Meek. Any questions? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell.
My question is, okay, these are board members. How do new board members get on the board of directors since we are continuously putting the same ones back on the board?
Dr. Royster.
We'll defer to Mr. Webb for the process for board member selection. Mr. Webb?
Sure, thank you. The process is that the best board directors will nominate individuals to serve on the best board. These individuals are experienced with Best as the entity. I've been on there several terms, and so the best board nominated these individuals. Again, the next step in the process is for the board of trustees, the school board, to affirm that nomination and appointment. And it's sort of a two-step process. First at the best board level, and then secondly at the school board level.
So how do you get someone new on that? You have to contact the best board in order for them to appoint them, and we approve them?
Ultimately, yes, the best board could nominate someone different, and then the school board could approve that nomination.
So the school board doesn't nominate, just the best board does?
Correct.
That's my only question. Thank you.
That's all? All right. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Sailors.
Doug, who else serves on this board other than the four that we just recommended?
Andrew Jones.
So there's 5 on the board total,
Yes, sir.
and they're all former school board trustees. That's one of the requirements to serve on that board is that they need to be a former member of this body.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing no one, at this time we'll vote. All in favor, please address by saying aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. 6.02, proposed action to conclude the lawsuit between the American Humanists Association and Greenville County School District. Mr. Webb.
Thank you. Before you is a proposed agreement for your consideration that very importantly is being recommended by the administration for 2 reasons, but primarily because this agreement would protect and secure the free exercise rights, the freedom of speech rights of students and employees. And any costs related to the school district would also be covered by the former insurance carrier for the district. But the administration, and I will certainly, Dr. Royster may want to speak to you as well. The administration feels comfortable in bringing this to you after several months of negotiations with the American Humanists Association. And to be candid, I did not think, if you went back in time a year or 2 from now, from today's date, and in the past, thought that I would be here in recommending a resolution in this matter. But AHA has agreed to several aspects of this case that makes that possible. And most importantly, and I can't stress this enough, is the central issue of the case of the protection of student rights and their ability to pray, speak from a religious perspective, a secular perspective. Our employees' ability to show respect to those messages are all protected in accordance with this agreement. And so any concerns that we currently have with the current court order are removed. And this agreement would and does mirror First Amendment requirements under the U.S. Constitution, imposes no additional obligation on the school district other than what the law currently is.
You have a maker of the motion. There's a recommended motion from the administration. Yes, Ms. Bush.
The American Humanist Association lawsuit by executing this agreement, which strongly affirms and protects the religious freedom of district and students and employees in accordance with the United States Constitution at no cost to the district for its previous insurance.
Second.
Second by Mr. Meek. Debbie, I don't think your mic was on. Can you read that one more time?
My motion is to conclude the American Humanist Association lawsuit by executing this agreement, which strongly affirms and protects the religious freedom of district students and its employees in accordance with the United States Constitution at no cost to the district through its previous insurance carrier.
Second.
Second by Mr. Meek. Any questions? Mr. Sailors.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I'm like Mr. Meek. We've been fooling around with this for a long time. And every time we have a conversation about an outcome from work that Doug has done with this association, we have to be grateful in the fact that we're getting a step closer to its conclusion. So, Doug, I appreciate everything you've done to work through this. When we started this journey in 2014, unlike everybody else around this table, we thought it would be a few months and it would be gone. And I do appreciate the fact that we have worked very diligently to protect the rights and the freedoms of our students and staff. Doug, I would like to clarify one thing if I could, though. You mentioned in a comment earlier that if this is once this is approved by this body, then it removes all of the restrictions that we currently have with the current court order. Did I understand that correctly?
It would remove the language of concern that we had in the current court order, yes.
If the judge approves it.
Correct.
Okay, so we still have a what if factor. There's no guarantee once the board approves this motion, if they so choose to do so, there's still no guarantee that this will be accepted until the judge on this case does accept it. And that is correct.
There's no guarantee, but I am very optimistic that the court will approve it.
Well, we were very optimistic 4 years ago too, and the rug got pulled out from under us at that time, but that's another conversation. I'm in somewhat of a box here because I want to express some concerns if I could and be respectful of the executive session conversation. So I'm going to ask everybody to bear with me for just one moment. Because a couple of you have asked me tonight why I am so doggedly opposed to agreeing with anything connected to this issue. About 2 weeks following the lawsuit and shortly after a hearing with Judge Anderson that I attended, I walked into my Sunday school class on a Sunday morning. I was late. And as I walked in the door, a member of the class who was a retired teacher commented, "Well, there he is. We don't have to wait." Now, I thought they were picking at me for some reason. But I found out why. There were, of the 40-ish people in that room, a good many of them were vast supporters of public education. And they had been following the initial issues connected to this lawsuit. And that group wanted to pray for me that day. Now, I don't know if you've ever sat in a church and you've had 40 people lay their hand on you and they pray for you, but that is a powerful moment. I promised then, I promised to students at Wade Hampton, at Eastside, at Blue Ridge, at Riverside, and others. I promised parents and taxpayers that I would not vote for anything that came across that we looked like we were caving in, and that's not the right word, to the American Humanist Association. One of the things that sets my community off is their website. The American Humanist Association, good without God. That's on their website. This is going to have a cost. And once this motion is public and those costs are public, I would be willing to venture a number of us are going to have to answer questions as to why we approved it. That's not for me to say. But there is no way under God's little green acre that I can sit here tonight and support something from a group that tears down and chastises community values. And that's exactly what they do. We talked about the financial components in September. And we indicated then that there was a mechanism in place to cover whatever the relationship would end or the circumstances would end up being. That's all well and good. It says in the motion that no cost to the district through its previous insurance carrier. We paid premiums to that insurance carrier. And until I'm proven wrong on paper, I find it hard to believe that taxpayer dollars that paid the premiums that contributed to the profit and loss statement of Liberty Mutual is not going to be involved even a little bit in the conclusion of this case if it's approved. Now, we all have to make the decision according to our own beliefs, our own respect to the process and what it'll do for our employees. And I am glad that we were able to get that component across and approved. But I cannot sit there and approve it as it is currently written because the AHA could sit there and say, we got our way. So, Madam Chairman, with all respect, I'm going to have to vote against the motion. And when we do get to the portion of the motion, I'd like to ask for a roll call. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Well, I too agree with Mr. Sailors.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
if you're going to speak on the motion, you need to turn the gavel over.
Okay, I'm going to turn the gavel over to Ms. Wells.
Ms. Leventis Wells.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too am in agreement with Mr. Sailors. I've been contacted by many people before and even as well as a few weeks ago. Constituents in my district who said, stay strong, stay true to yourself, and do things for the right reasons. Mr. Webb has done a remarkable job in getting us to the point where we are tonight. And he is one of my constituents. And it's a very difficult situation, but I just believe I don't want to fold. I do want what's best for all. But I am concerned and with us moving forward and then this judge listening to our appeal and our decision. So with that being said, I too will vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leventis Wells. Is there anyone else that wants to speak to the motion? Stiles.
I would like to speak to the motion as well to say that I concur with both you, Chuck, and Linda. I feel very strongly about this issue. And I believe that there are no guarantees, even in settling this case. And I believe that I have a moral obligation to move forward in the system and in the courts to bring resolve to this. So thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak to the motion? Okay. Hearing none, the motion on the floor is to conclude the American Humanist Association lawsuit by executing this agreement, which strongly affirms and protects the religious freedom of district students and employees in accordance with the United States Constitution at no cost to the district through its previous insurance carrier. Roll call. Who's going to do our roll call for us? Nancy. Ms. Fitzer, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Bush? Yes.
Ms. Doolin,
Yes.
Goodwin Caldwell,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Meek,
Yes.
Morrison Fair, Mosley,
Yes.
Mr. Sailors, Dr. Stiles, Ms. Levinas Wells,
No.
Ms. Wells.
Yes.
8 yes, 3 no.
So the motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7.01. Ms. Leventis Wells, I'm going to continue with the meeting agenda unless you want the microphone back.
No, you go right ahead.
All right. Do we have any committee or liaison reports tonight? Mr. Sailors?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I have just a quick update related to legislative issues. Some of you have probably seen in the paper where the State Department of Education has announced that they are going to be funding the additional $84 million in CARES Act money that they receive from the feds coming to the state districts on a proportional basis. If you may recall, back in October, a similar conversation was had. There's been some confusion both, quite frankly, within the district and within the State Department and within the public, whether this is a second round. It's not. Same money. However, we did gain $200,000. When we received the original estimate 2 months ago, it was a little less than what it is now. What we will be receiving is $7,813,000 and $193. So it's $7,813,193. And again, that is roughly $200,000 above the estimates that we received earlier in the year. So those monies will be coming to the district. They are to be expended by no later than September of 2021. They can only be used in four general areas related to school safety measures, which would be the purchase of PPE equipment and things that we would need to continue to keep the classroom safe and secure. The hiring of school nurses or school nurse services, the securing of tutors, supplemental services, and services for under-engaged students, interventionists, and things of that nature. And then technology purchases for devices that are connecting equipment that are needed related to COVID-19. So those are the four areas that money is restricted to. Also, if I could, related to actual legislative and advocacy committee, so far in pre-filing in the legislature, there have been 9 pages of bills pre-filed so far. A lot of those are items that were not passed in previous sessions, and they're being reintroduced. Some of them are pieces of legislation that probably won't get a lot of traction, if that's the politest way I can put it. Again, as I said, some of them are repeats. And then there are still dates open for additional pre-file. So those are the next 2 or 3 days, if you will, and then the time for pre-file closes. After the pre-file time closes, we will work to take the list of legislation that's been pre-filed and narrow it down to things that are more directly connected to legislation for education. And we'll see that is discussed and reviewed by the advocacy committee in January. One point of interest, last year we did discuss and promoted a piece of legislation related to the inclusion of school board members into the state retirement system. That bill has been reintroduced in this session. So that's all that I have right now, but there's still a lot of information coming in, and Julie and I will weed through it and get it to the committee as quickly as possible. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Sailors. Are there any questions about Ms. Goodwin Caldwell?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sailors.
Ms. Goodwin Caldwell, just ask the question generally, and then I'll ask Mr. Sailors to respond.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Settlers, of those 4 areas, who determines under those different areas how that money is spent? Like, for instance, with the tutoring, I'm thinking about the homeless students.
Yes, and
Who determines that? Because I'm kind of concerned about those homeless students, and what's going to happen on December 30th when they lift that eviction thing, and
Yes,
it'll be more homeless students.
Yes, ma'am.
So who determines that?
Mr. Sailors.
Oh, yeah.
I want to kick the can over to Dr. Royster.
We'd make that determination based on the guideline of the funding. We'd handle it much in the same way we handle other special revenues. In fact, the remediation efforts that you've heard us speak of, we'd already allocated funds within that for those purposes. And so I assume when you're talking about working with homeless students specifically, it would still have to be in working with them within the areas designated. So I would imagine that based on the current levels of remediation that we're doing, and that we will need to continue to do them for a period of time, I suspect that the majority of that funding is going to be used on remediation, particularly now that we're in school more. So the remediation will have to generally shift to a greater reliance on times before and after school, for which we would need to compensate teachers additionally to serve during those times.
Okay, my question is that if they are like in virtual and they are failing, and you're talking about the remediation before and after school, how would that work for those homeless students that are in virtual, that are not coming to the schools?
Mr. McCoy's academic staff has plans that direct help for virtual students. And in fact, in some cases, whether they're willing to do so, we've actually brought them into school at different times to work with them in person if that's what their families wish to do.
Okay, Mr. Settlers, you said that we're receiving like an extra 200,000.
No, ma'am.
From what y'all had thought that we would get. I would hope that some of that would go towards something like this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. If I could, Madam Chairman. Well, I need to clarify something from this comment. You did previously share with my request a concern about homeless students. It has been, and so although that does not fall under any education-related legislation, we did reach out to a member of the legislature that serves on the committee and see if there's any legislation that would be addressing that, because there are members of the caucus like Representative Dillard who I know are also keenly interested in that. Although that does not fall under the direct purview of education, that is still something this board could support if something is introduced.
Thank
So
you,
we're going to continue to work on that.
Thank you, Mr. Sellers.
Thank
Thank you,
you,
Ms. Stephen Caldwell. Mr. Lewis.
Just a follow-up question on advocacy. So in the previous legislative session, there was an action to increase teacher pay by the General Assembly that then later was frozen because of some projected shortfalls in funds. Do we have any indication whether that there is a plan currently in place to see that action restored in this?
There's at least 24 pieces of legislation currently in the pre-filed area that deal with that very topic. What I find most interesting is Senator Fanning has introduced a piece on the Senate side that would be in the area that you're discussing, and Representative Collins from Pickens has done the same thing on the House side. And the only way right now that a lot of this is going to get any traction is by virtue of the fact that it needs to be bipartisan. I mean, let's face facts. The legislature has a supermajority in one party. And so the only way that the minority party is going to get anything accomplished is to try to make as many things as possible bipartisan. That's what we need to support, bipartisan legislation.
If I might add to that.
Dr. Royster.
If you're looking specifically toward the proposal that began when we had a better budget projection for this coming year, And the fact that at points in that process, they said they'd revisit that during the year. I think that is highly unlikely at this point because they're now down to that $2 billion surplus is, I believe, around 36 million now statewide. So the likelihood of that's very, really non-existent, I think. In addition to the things that Mr. Saylors shared about the number of measures being introduced, I believe the state superintendent presented her first budget request this week. And if I recall correctly, request in that budget, which is one step in the budget process, I believe a 2% raise overall, which would be a 2% applied to all sales of the minimum state salary schedule, and a step increase. So that's out there as a proposal in addition to the legislative proposals.
Thank you, Dr. Royster. Mr. Lewis, anything else? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Hearing none, that was for information only. We'll move on to the finance report.
Committee.
On committee, you got a committee report?
A small one. We have
Mr.
not
Committee.
had the audit committee meet. I'm going to try to meet in early January after the new internal auditor starts to work. I don't know when that is.
It's actually going to be a little bit later in January. We received a request on the behalf of Green Finney to allow him to finish up some projects. So I think his start date is delayed by 6 or 8 days, something like that. But it'll be sometime in the month of January. Dr. Turner's attending an EOC meeting this afternoon. He's the one that's kind of handled that. So I don't know the specific date to tell you, but we'll let you know tomorrow.
Okay, and in the meantime, for other board members, if they have any suggestions or ideas to present to the audit committee about audits that they would like to see the board to challenge our auditor with, if you'll be thinking about those, I'll send something out before the meeting. And if I remember correctly, we have to have that recommendation in April, and with it back to the board maybe in April or May. So we will be working on that in the next 3 or 4 months. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. And I guess for the benefit of the new board members, we might, Ms. Spitzer, if we have some of the presentations that we had done previously where we talked about the different types of audits that we might conduct, that might be helpful for the new board members to have a sense of what that looks like. Okay, so we'll move on to item 8.01, the monthly finance report. Dr. Royster, do you have anything to present formally?
You have that information in your packet. I believe Ms. Stack has 1 or 2 items that she wanted to particularly direct to your attention. One has to do with the graphing curve on the fund balance, because it looks a little bit different in a positive way, but there's an explanation for that.
Thank you, Dr. Oyster. The line graph that you received as a part of your financial package, if you'll notice at the end of FY20 line, it goes up, whereas all the other years it went down. That reflects the savings that we had at the end of FY20 due to several different things. One being we received the CARES Act and had got the opportunity to move some expenses to the CARES Act. And then we had savings in areas such as utilities, substitutes, and supply cost for the time that we were closed. And so those items were added to the fund balance, or those amounts, unspent amounts, were added to the fund balance, which is reflected by the increase in the line instead of the normal decrease that you see. Also, if you would also look at the bar chart for expenditures of general fund, you can see that totally for the period through October, we are down in our expenditures as compared to budget. It is a result of several things. We've had less days in our payroll periods thus far through October, so our salary costs are down, but that will be remedied as we go on throughout the year. Sub costs are down. And actually bus driver costs are down due to the change in need for bus drivers for field trips and transportation costs related to athletic trips, so forth. And totally, you can see that all costs as a percent of budget are down slightly from the 2 prior years. And I'm here to take any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Lewis?
Dr. Oyster, when we approved the budget for FY21, there were a number of items that we approved kind of on a frozen basis with the understanding that we knew the fall was going to bring a lot of uncertainty and we didn't want to commit those dollars and we held them. Now that we are kind of approaching the end of December, do you anticipate bringing to us in the spring any recommendations to unfreeze any of those allocations, or are we continuing to hold those frozen?
It is quite possible that we might recommend unfreezing some of them, some small number of them. The other thing that's going to happen, and this is kind of, make sure I mention this during the financial report, you may recall that we deferred the approval of the external audit because there is a requirement there be a single audit for CARES Act funding, and that it must be audited by our external auditors in compliance with federal guidance that still has yet to be issued as of last week. The state moved the date for the submission of the district's external audit from December to January. So regardless at this point of whether that audit guidance is issued or not, we must submit our audit in January. So we will bring to you in January at the January CAL and probably request a special call following for you to formally accept the audit, a semi-final audit presented by Green Finney, and that it will leave out that required federal audit, which will have to be added later on. But it'll comply with all the state requirements, and it will fully audit all the other funds in the normal manner. When we do that, as is customary, we will have an audited revenue in excess of expense from last year. That will likely be a very positive number as well. What we will also know on or about the end of January would be the adjustment from EFA, because that report would be it'll be past the CAL date.
Yes, sir, it will be.
Because at some point, the state, following our 90-day report, they're going to adjust out the EFA per pupil amount. We could be adjusted down by maybe as much as $5.6 million. But before we would recommend anything regarding that fund balance, we'd want to have the final official fund balance number from Green Finney. I think perhaps it might be likely we wouldn't want to recommend anything regarding the freezing or thawing of those accounts until we know how much we're going to get adjusted out on revenue. But I think that's probably not going to be an issue based on the amount that we're accumulating at this point that we're not having to spend. Now, again, as we have more people back in school, those energy costs are going to go back more in line with our normal expenditures for energy. If we could get more subs, we'll spend more in the sub budget. But things seem reasonably positive for the rest of the year related to potential loss of revenue. And I think they'll be very positive as far as revenue in excess of expense, because we also still believe we're going to have a very challenging budget year next year and the following year, for which there may need to be some reliance on fund balance. Now, again, that's a precarious walk to make because you don't want to create so much reliance on non-recurring funds for recurring expenditures, because somewhere down the road, you got to come up with recurring revenue to offset those expenses. But I think it will be likely we will have to use that. One of the things that's going to be very uncertain as we enter the budget time will be our pupil count. I think we firmly believe when this pandemic is past us, we not only will regain the students we lost, we're going to continue to grow. And we may need to have people in position before our pupil projections solely based on this year would indicate we need to have them. So there's going to be a lot of, I think, nuances in the budget. So that may have been a little more information than you wanted, but I think it's important to know that, and also to prepare you to know that we intend to bring that external audit forward, whether they've gotten guidance from the federal government on auditing the CARES Act or not.
No, I appreciate all of that, and I know that this year is so different from a traditional year, and I appreciate waiting until we're sure what we know and what we don't know. And my only request is just as we begin to look towards either unthawing some of those dollars that have been frozen or finding funds that we didn't think were going to be available previously, that anything this administration could do to help put dollars towards the teachers in the classroom, I would certainly appreciate. I know some districts have gone to the bonus route, which I think frankly has a negative tax impact on those teachers, knowing that the General Assembly at best is going to give a 2% raise, and probably not all the superintendent Spearman has requested. I just think anything that you and your staff could do to find any funds to help provide support to those teachers, I would really appreciate.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Anyone else? So I guess as a follow-up to what Mr. Lewis said, Royster, in January, you will potentially make some recommendations on some based on the projections, unfreezing some of that.
That's quite possible, or perhaps some other recommendations when we get that concluded final audited revenue in excess of expense.
And I guess similarly to what he's saying, whether it's looking at salary increases or some other supports that we might be sure we consider for teachers because of the enormous burden that they have found themselves in this year in trying to deliver these educational services. We need them to be at their best, and they are struggling to be at their best.
And those are some of the things that we are looking at as far as what might be cost attached to those kinds of things, most particularly looking at things that would not have a recurring impact.
Thank you. Mr. Meek.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. I have a motion to adjourn, seconded twice. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We are adjourned.